Assalamu alaikum students. Happy New Year to everyone. In the last session, we have completed chapter, last topic discussed and aftermath. Today we are going to discuss what we have learned. So let's recall what we have learned. We call it revision session. So let's begin. Here about when people revolt of 1857, reasons, how did it start, and what was after that, aftermath. Let's see. As earlier I told you, rebel, that means to go against the system, to go against the authority. Why people did that? Because British policies responsible for that adverse condition at that time responsible for that. So basically, British policy was against the Indian people, different sections of the society. Different people were affected by it: kings, queens, peasants, landlords, tribals, soldiers. All were affected in different ways. And people bear as long as they could. When they got chance, they resisted. Now let's see how did people affected by it. So first, Nawabs lost their power. Nawabs, those who were actually under the Mughal, they became independent. They lost their power afterwards. Why? How? Let's see. Since the mid 18th century, Nawabs and Rajas had seen their power erode. They had gradually lost their authority and honor they enjoyed before. Residents had been stationed in many courts. The freedom of the rulers reduced. Residents, those British representatives, were kept in different courts in different kingdoms, and they kept watch on king's view, Nawab's view. So gradually they lost their powers and freedom. So their armed force disbanded. They had to pay revenue to the company, as well as many territories were taken by British with one or another reasons in India. Many ruling families tried to negotiate with the company to protect their interests. For example, Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi wanted the company to recognize her adopted son as the heir of the kingdom after death of her husband. Nana Sahib Peshwa, Nana Sahib, who was the adopted son of Peshwa Bajirao II, also pleaded that he be given his father's pension when the latter died. However, the company, confident of its superiority and military powers, turned down this plea. Company didn't listen anyone, didn't care anyone. One or another way, they wanted to annex the territory. So one more example of their annexation, Awadh. Awadh was one of the last territories to be annexed. In 1801, a subsidiary alliance was imposed on Awadh. You people have learnt about subsidiary alliance. So that system, subsidiary alliance, was imposed on Awadh. And in 1856, it was taken over. Awadh was taken over in 1856. Governor General, Governor General Lord Dalhousie declared that the territory was misgoverned, not ruled properly, and British rule was needed to ensure proper administration. By this reason, he annexed the territory of Awadh. So this is how one or another way Rajas and Ranis, queens, as well as Nawabs, they lost their powers. And Year by year, British became more powerful, more wealthier. More, the company even began to plan how to bring the Mughal dynasty to the end. Now, after Kings Nawab to the Mughal dynasty. The name of the Mughal king was removed from the coins minted by the British company. In 1849, Governor General Lord Dalhousie announced that after the death of Bahadur Shah Zafar, emperor at that time, the family of king would be shifted out of Red Fort. They had their palace in Red Fort, Royal Palace. So he announced to shift them from Royal Palace to somewhere in Delhi, outside of fort. In 1856, Governor General Canning decided that Bahadur Shah Zafar would be the last Mughal king, and after his death, none of his descendants, he had son, princes, but he announced that none of his descendants would be recognized as kings. They would just call princes. So they wanted to turn out Mughal powers to the end. And now, apart from those kings, emperor and nawabs, now let's see about the situation of peasants and sepoys in India. Sepoys, sipai. In the countryside, peasants and jamindar resented the high taxes and rigid method of revenue collection. They were dissatisfied with it. Many failed to pay back their loans to the moneylenders because they had to pay that huge amount of land revenue. And gradually they lost the land they had tilled for the generation, they cultivated for the generation, rented for the generation, they lost their land. The Indian sepoys, the employee of the company, also had reason for their discontent. In British Army, actually, more Indian people were employed as sepoys compared to British. So they had their own grievances to British. They were unhappy about their pay. They got less pay, allowances and condition of service. Compared to British, their condition of services and other allowances were less. So their benefits were less compared to British, too less. Some of the new rules, moreover, violated their religious sensibilities and beliefs. Before, people believed that in many castes they were not allowed to cross the oceans. If they cross the ocean, if they would abroad, they were out of their caste. So, when 1824, the sepoys were told to go Burma by the sea route to fight for the company because they were sepoys of the company. They refused to follow the order because of their religion. They would lose their caste and religion and they didn't want it. So they refused to do so. So they agreed to go by land route. Yeah, but British needed them to fight there. So they agreed to go on land route. They were severely punished, and since the issue did not die down, in 1856, company passed a new law which started that every new person who took up employment in company's army had to agree with serve overseas if required. Because they refused to go, company punished them, and a new law passed. According to new law, those who wanted to join company's army, they had to agree to serve British overseas abroad. Sepoys also reacted to what was happening in the countryside. Many of them were peasants and had family living in the villages. So sepoys also know the condition of peasants in the countryside, in rural area, as many of them were peasants, those who joined British Army. Their families were there in rural area, in villages. So the anger of peasants quickly spread among the sepoys. So anger of peasants quickly spread among sepoys. Connected. Now responses to reform. One more reason. How did that religious people and those People, those who were stuck to their culture, how did they affect? So the British believed that Indian society had to be reformed. Many people believed that, yes, true. So laws were passed to stop the practice of sati and to encourage the remarriage of widow. English language education was actively promoted by British. After 1830, the company allowed Christian missionaries to function freely in its domain and even on land and property. Christian missionary, those the Christianity, those people, monks and nuns, those who spread the Christianism and serve the people. In 1850, a new law was passed to make conversion to Christianity much easier. This law allowed to Indians who had converted to Christianity to inherit the property of their ancestor. Even those who converted into Christianity, they could continue with, they could inherit the property of their ancestor. Many Indians began to feel that the British were destroying the religion. As I said, those religious people didn't like it. Yes, some modern people, some philosophers actually accepted it, but many Indian people didn't like it. So, what they believe? They believe that their social customs and their traditional way of life were destroyed by British. So, hear about those people, those religious people who didn't like reformation. Let's see through the eyes of people, to the glimpse of what people thinking those days about British rule. Common people. We have seen two sources. We have discussed two sources before. Right? One source we have seen of Vishnu Bhatt Godse. Right, in his diary, he wrote about the condition that time. In detail discussion already done, so please watch the previous video. And one more source of Sepoy to Subedar. Right, he described about the situation, about the excitement against the British in the different regiment. So about Sitaram Pandey, please. Read that, who was a sepoy and became the Subedar. Already discussed in detail in the video, so please refer to this video. Because in revision, if I take this, it would be too long. Now let's see that how did a mutiny became a popular rebellion. Like earlier we have seen that it was merely a mutiny. Mutiny means when soldier as a group disobey their officers in the army called mutiny. So it was mutiny in Meerut, and how that a mutiny becomes a popular rebellion. Let's begin. Though struggles between rulers and the ruled are not unusual in human history, sometimes such struggles become quite widespread as the popular resistance so that the power of the state breaks down. A very large number of people begin to believe that they have common enemy and rise up against the enemy at the same time. In human history, many times witnessed that when tyranny becomes that the rule became the tyranny to the people, people began to resist. And in resistance, many times powers were broken down. In the case of India also, similar thing happened. People begin to feel that different sections of the society, rich, poor, landlord, peasants, workers, laborers, artisans, craft persons, religious people, sepoys, they had their own grievances, even emperor, kings, queens. They had different grievances, they had their different problems according to their position in the society. But, however, they had one enemy, one common enemy, British East India Company. So, for such situation, to develop people have to organize, to communicate, take initiative, and display the confidence to turn the situation around. And such situation developed in the northern part of India in 1857. With that time, the revolt of 1857 broke out. What happened next, we are discussed in detail in the video. The revision part we'll see in the next video. Stay tuned and wait for notes. I'll provide you notes soon. Thank you so much for watching.